I stood there, watching everything I'd poured my heart into go up in flames, the orange glow licking the night sky like it was hungry for more. My barn, my dreams, my life reduced to ash while she stood across the field, sipping her tea like she was at a Sunday picnic, her lips curled in a smile that didn't belong. Every petty rule, every fine, every forced smile had been building to this moment. The heat wasn't just burning my property, it was searing something deeper, a realization that someone out there didn't just want me gone, they wanted me erased. And when you see a shadow creeping past your window at 2 a.m., you know it's no coincidence. Let me take you back to the start, because you need to understand how I ended up standing in front of a burning barn in Pine Hollow, Texas, in the spring of 2023. My name's Ethan Harper, 37, a guy who used to investigate fires for the state of Texas before I got fed up with sifting through other people's tragedies. My mom, Margaret, 70, spent 4 decades crunching numbers at Gulf Coast Credit Union, sharp as a tack and twice as stubborn. She had this wild idea to buy a 20-acre spread in Pine Hollow, a quiet little town south of Houston. Picture it: rolling pastures, a sturdy barn for horses, a vegetable garden bursting with tomatoes and zucchini. It was our slice of heaven, or so we thought. 3 days after we moved in, Laura Bennett knocked on our door, clipboard in hand, looking like she'd been waiting for us to arrive. At 40, with sleek dark hair and a pantsuit that screamed corporate, she introduced herself as the president of the Pine Hollow Homeowners Association. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth, as she handed me a binder stuffed with HOA rules thicker than a phone book. "Welcome to Pine Hollow," she said, flipping pages like she was closing a deal. "I'm here to ensure you understand our community expectations." Her boyfriend, Travis, trailed behind her, 41, broad-shouldered, with the kind of swagger you'd expect from a guy who talks about building things but never picks up a hammer. He nodded along, muttering about property values and neighborhood harmony. I should have shut the door right then, but I was trying to play nice, you know? New town, fresh start. Big mistake. The trouble started small. A $75 fine because our Texas state flag was slightly oversized. Another $150 when Margaret's sister parked her RV overnight during a visit. I figured it was just typical HOA nonsense, the kind of thing that'd fizzle out once they saw we weren't troublemakers. Boy, was I wrong. The fines kept coming, each one more ridiculous than the last $200 for unauthorized garden expansion, because we planted carrots a foot too close to the fence line. It felt like Laura had a personal vendetta, but it wasn't just us. The family down the road, the Millers, had lived there for 15 years, quiet as church mice. Laura decided their windmill was a visual nuisance and slapped them with $250 daily fines. I watched Tom Miller rip that windmill down, his face red with frustration, but Laura wasn't done. She nitpicked their lawn height, their mailbox shade, even their kid's bike left out too long. 6 months later, they were bankrupt, forced to sell their home to cover legal fees. That's when I knew this wasn't just bureaucracy, it was a calculated attack. The HOA meeting that changed everything is still burned into my brain. Picture 50 neighbors crammed into the Pine Hollow Community Center, most avoiding my gaze like they were scared of catching Laura's attention. She stood up front, clicking through a PowerPoint like a prosecutor, photos of our barn and garden splashed across the screen. "Mr. Harper's farming activities are tanking our property values and violating multiple community standards," she declared, her voice dripping with disdain. "This kind of operation belongs in the boonies, not our upscale neighborhood." The room went quiet, every eye on me like I was some kind of outlaw. Then she dropped the bomb. $7,500 in fines, due in 30 days, or we'd face a lawsuit. For what? Having horses and a garden on land zoned for exactly that when we bought it. Margaret gripped my hand under the table, her banker's mind already working. When Laura asked for questions, Mom stood up, her voice sweet but sharp as a blade. "That was quite the presentation, Laura," she said. "As someone who's handled money for 40 years, I'd love to see the financials behind these fines, just to ensure everything's above board." Laura's smile twitched, and I knew Mom had hit a nerve. After that meeting, neighbors who used to nod hello started crossing the street to avoid us. The Millers' empty house sat there like a ghost, a warning to anyone who dared question Laura. Travis had been filming the whole meeting on his phone, smirking and muttering about standards like he was narrating a reality show. I should have paid more attention to how much he enjoyed our public shaming, but I was too humiliated to think straight. That night, I sat on our porch, staring at our horses, wondering if we'd made a terrible mistake moving here. But Margaret wasn't having it. "We're not backing down, Ethan," she said, her eyes fierce. "This isn't about rules. It's about power." She was right. This was bullying dressed up as community governance. At 2 a.m., a few nights later, Margaret shook me awake, pointing to my bedroom window. "Look at the barn," she whispered. A figure with a flashlight was skulking around our horse stalls, snapping photos of our feed bins. When our motion lights flicked on, they vanished into the dark, but not before I caught a whiff of cheap cologne that screamed Travis. 3 days later, I woke to the worst sound I've ever heard: our horses, Storm and Blaze, screaming in terror. I ran to the window and saw our barn swallowed by flames, 20 feet high, the heat so fierce it pressed against the glass. I fumbled with my phone, hands shaking, barely able to dial 911. The fire department took 28 minutes to arrive, 28 minutes of watching our world burn. Storm and Blaze didn't make it. Neither did our equipment or feed. The damage hit $250,000, but no number captures the sound of animals you love dying while you stand there, useless. By morning, neighbors gathered, some genuinely shaken, others just gawking. Mrs. Carter from down the road brought us coffee and muffins, and the Thompsons offered to help clear debris. For a moment, it felt like Pine Hollow might come together. Then Laura showed up with a news crew, playing the part of a grieving community leader. "This tragedy impacts us all," she said to the cameras, tears welling up on cue. "The HOA will start a relief fund to support the Harpers and ensure this never happens again." I had to walk away before I lost it. Travis arrived later, offering fake condolences while his eyes scanned the wreckage like he was appraising it. When he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him photographing burn patterns with a focus that wasn't grief, it was clinical, like he was studying his own work. That's when I knew this was arson. Laura's relief fund raised $20,000 in days, with Travis handling the money through his business account for tax purposes. It seemed legit at the time, but it was the first clue I missed. Our neighbor Emily, who'd always been kind, helping with the horses when we were away, came to me one afternoon, eyes red. "Ethan, I can't help anymore," she said, wringing her hands. "The HOA board visited and said my taxes could go up if I'm seen with problem residents." That's what we were now, problem residents. Margaret spent that day quietly talking to neighbors, her banker's knack for listening drawing out secrets. That evening, she told me, "People are scared, Ethan. Laura's been visiting homes, reminding folks what happened to the Millers. But fear makes people talk, and I heard things about recent HOA meetings that don't add up." 2 nights after the fire, Travis approached us at the charred barn, offering debris removal at cost. He handed me his business card, but his eyes kept darting to the burn marks, his phone out, snapping photos like he was documenting a crime scene. His focus wasn't on helping, it was on analyzing. I started to suspect he knew exactly how that fire started because he'd been there. The next week, Laura doubled down, using our loss to push new rules. No unsightly military decorations because they clashed with the community aesthetic. Telling veterans they couldn't display service medals? That crossed a line, and even her loyalists started to waver. Margaret, meanwhile, went full detective, volunteering for the HOA's new Green Spaces Committee to dig into their finances. 40 years in banking taught me how to spot fraud, she told me. I want to know how this machine really runs. At her first meeting, she played the sweet old lady, asking innocent questions. "I notice we're spending $4,000 a month on landscaping," she said. "Seems steep for a town this size. Could we review those contracts?" The room got tense, and Laura's smile tightened. Through committee access, Margaret found Travis's company had been paid $50,000 in a year for maintenance that was either non-existent or wildly overpriced. $2,000 to mow a lawn any gardener would do for $50. Then she found a flyer for Crestview Plaza, a shopping complex set to break ground 6 months after we'd moved in. 6 months. They'd been planning this before we even unpacked. "Ethan," she said, her face grim. "They wanted our land from the start. This was never random." That week, An anonymous email hit my inbox from an encrypted server. Stop digging, or your remaining animals join the horses. We know your routines, your mother's schedule, every weak spot on your property. This wasn't Laura's usual passive-aggressive nonsense. Seat felt professional, like someone who'd done this before. Margaret and I started piecing together the puzzle. Every targeted property, including ours, sat on strategic land. Fines and harassment always hit families who wouldn't sell, and Travis's company always profited. Neighbors started reaching out through Mike Thompson, a Navy vet who'd been keeping his own notes on HOA abuses. I've seen patterns, he whispered one day. Want to compare? Families shared stories of fines for wetting guests' cars or gardens too close to fences. It was a system: target, pressure, profit. One night, the phone rang, a shaky voice on the line. Ethan, it's Susan from the HOA board. I can't talk long, but there's a bigger plan. They're calling it Phase 2 acquisitions, and your land is the centerpiece. Meet me at the Rusty Spoon Diner on Highway 12 tomorrow at 7 p.m. Susan's tip led us to meeting minutes mentioning redevelopment initiatives and outside investors. Our land, the Millers, Mike's, they all bordered a creek, perfect for water rights or infrastructure. Margaret's banking skills spotted money laundering patterns in Travis's filings, suggesting federal crimes. This isn't just fraud, she said. They're moving assets for something massive. We tracked down a contractor, Nate, tied to Travis's shell company, Horizon Services. His workshop was a mess of half-finished projects, and he flinched when we mentioned Travis. I don't know anything about your fire, he stammered, backing toward his door. I bluffed. Nate, we found your card near our barn. The fire marshal wants to talk. His face went white, hands shaking. He spilled. He'd faked invoices for Travis, thinking it was just tax dodging. I didn't touch your property, I swear, he said. But Travis mentioned Operation Crown. Something about federal contracts and a guy in the county office, Commissioner Bradley, maybe. Nate's confession hinted at a coordinator pulling strings, someone above Travis and Laura we hadn't identified. Things escalated when 3 black SUVs rolled onto our land, Laura and Travis leading a crew with survey gear and future development signs. They set up like they owned the place, Laura directing cameras while Travis measured our fence line. Nate's tip about Operation Crown suggested a hidden agenda, not just a mall, but data centers or shipping routes tied to money laundering. Days later, Travis called an emergency HOA meeting, bringing in a retired fire chief, Captain Daniel Pierce, who claimed my negligent storage caused the fire. His technical jargon, flammable materials, heat sources, swayed half the room. But my hidden cameras caught Travis paying Pierce in a parking lot, coaching him on what to say. When I tried to show the footage, Travis yelled fire and pulled the alarm, smashing my laptop in the chaos. The gall of using a false alarm to bury evidence. That stunt backfired. Firefighters found Travis's prints on the alarm, adding federal charges for tampering with safety systems. During the chaos, I saw Susan slip out the back, whispering into her phone. Phase 3 needs to move faster. They're too close to the hub. Susan, the quiet HOA board member, was the coordinator, hiding in plain sight. Her properties bordered every targeted lot, poised to cash in on the development. Under questioning, Travis's story unraveled, his lies tripping over each other. Margaret cornered Pierce, flattering him into admitting he'd been paid to lie. Susan's call mentioned a coordination hub, a physical base for Operation Crown. The FBI stepped in, Agent Sarah Coleman, no relation, revealing they'd been tracking Crestview Plaza as a front for a cartel money laundering network spanning 14 states. Travis cracked, confessing to arson and fraud but pointing the finger at Laura as the mastermind, claiming she answered to the Queen and federal contacts. Laura, using her sister's ID as Elaine Carter, hid at a Colorado ski lodge, thinking she could shred evidence. Margaret fed Susan fake intel about barn evidence implicating feds, panicking Laura into emailing her contacts from the lodge's computer. The FBI traced her in hours. Criminals, even the smart ones, slip up under pressure. The coordination hub was a warehouse packed with servers, encrypted radios, and maps of targeted communities. Postcards from operatives bragged about forced sales nationwide. Agent Sarah showed us geological surveys. Our land sat on oil and gas deposits worth $50 million. That's why they burned our barn to force a cheap sale. Laura got 30 years for racketeering and money laundering, Travis 25 for arson and conspiracy, Susan 20 as a domestic terrorist. Federal seizures created a restitution fund, and we rebuilt our ranch with fireproof systems and a therapy program for veterans, honoring Storm and Blaze with a memorial garden. Our fight sparked HOA reforms, federal audits, and whistleblower protections. The investigation uncovered similar schemes in 38 states, recovering billions for victims. We got new horses, valor, and freedom, and our community turned from fear to unity. One evening, an old man left an envelope at our gate with 1950s photos of our land and a note. Your father would be proud. Some secrets are worth keeping. I don't know who he was, but standing on our rebuilt porch with Margaret, watching the Texas sunset, I felt we'd turned ashes into something stronger. Laura and Travis thought they could burn us out, but their fire forged a legacy of justice. What would you have done when the flames started? Would you keep fighting, knowing the danger, or let the feds take over? Should we have shown mercy to Laura's plea deal after all she did? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if this story gripped you, and subscribe for more tales that'll keep you up at night.